Good morning. Welcome to Books at the Bottom of the Stairs. My name's Lorene. This is June, finally. I've always looked forward to this. I'm going to be doing the June Newbery Challenge. If you haven't heard about it, it's in a couple of earlier videos. You can go back and find it. I think it's only one or two ago where I told you all about it. So libraries do what libraries do. And although I had everything placed on hold in May, and although I pushed the button to have them sent to me mid-May, only 2 have shown up, and there's no holding. I'm the only one on the list for these things, so I thought they'd be here like lickety-split. So I'm going to tell you what I've been reading in the meantime. Now, I came across this. The library is open now without masks, which is great. But the other part that's cooler is our library on the 5th floor has got a cafe, and it's one of these days I'm going to have to give you a tour of our library because it is just bloody amazing. I love the building, and I've decided that when I become a senior, more of a senior, and we have to leave the house and go to an apartment, I want the apartment building that's right across from the library. So because they've got a cafe in there, I don't really need a grocery store. I can just keep having all my meals at the cafe and get my books and go back home. And I can do that while I've got a walker too. So my retirement plan is in place. However, while I was up on the 5th floor approaching the brownies, I saw a pile of books that were all white, and they all had this kind of Gothic printing on them. And I guess it would make sense to do it just in case you can read it from that distance. And so it caught my eye. So this was completely an impulse pickup. It is by the author Oliver Potzsch. My German accents are not as good as they used to be. The Beggar King, the Hangman's Daughter Tale. So this is in translation. It's a mystery, a historical mystery, and it takes place in 1662 with Jakob Kuzel, who also could be known as Jacob Kuzel. He's the hangman of a village in the Alps. Now, what's interesting about this is the Kuzel family did exist, in fact, and they historically were the hangmen in this section of Switzerland, Germany, and they did that for generations, I guess as long as there were hangmen and Kuzels, they did the job. So we go back into 1662 with Jacob, and he has a daughter, Magdalena, and Jacob has been called to a city down the river, down the Danube, for going to see his sister. And upon arriving there, this book is so full of small plot points, it's very hard not to do spoilers. Let's just say his sister's not in the state that he expected to find her, and neither is the husband, and the mystery ensues. And at the same time, Magdalena is in love with someone who's studied to be a doctor, but who hasn't got his formal papers. But because of status and class and so forth, she's the hangman's daughter, he's a doctor. There's no way that their relationship would be given city approval. So, like, your marriages needed city approval in those days. I just can't imagine it. Just can't imagine. Anyhow, it would be declined because the hangman is also in charge of things like street cleaning and sewer cleaning and so on. So she's just status-wise not going to be good enough for this doctor. So they decide to run away to the city and go see the auntie who's down there. So they get there, and it is just one crazy plot point after another. And it's very intriguing. There's subterranean villages that were there at the time of the Romans, and there's the trouble with the upper noblemen. Then there's freemen who don't want to have anything to do. From a plot point, I really enjoyed it. This is a solid 3. What I didn't like was I think it could probably have been abbreviated by about 20%. And every once in a while, the author reuses sentences in order to describe Jacob. He's a big 6-foot tall bear of a man. we were pretty good on having that image in our minds by the time the book was finished. And I was thinking, what about mountain or dragon or, you know, other big things, wagon, barn, just all kinds of city gates. So anyhow, the author's not terrific on his descriptors, I guess. Well, he falls into the pattern of reusing them. So anyhow, the part that I didn't love is because he's the hangman, he's also in charge of torture. Because in those days, in this particular part of the world, there is an assumption of no innocence. There's an assumption of guilt. So you have to prove your innocence, but the only way you can do that is if you survive the torture. So the evidence is created against you, and you get to say what you want, but not really, because you're not even part of the process. And so under torture, you're supposed to either confess or not confess. So we all know what good torture has to do with confession. Sooner or later, you're just going to confess to your guilt to get rid of the pain. So I didn't like that part. I didn't mind that it existed, but it's just described a little too well. So for those of you who like a bit of blood and gore and pain, I think you'll enjoy this. And there's 6 or 7 of them in the series, so you can keep your goreness happy for quite a while. Completely opposite end of the spectrum is Enchanted April by Elizabeth Van Arnim. Now, I thought I was going to like this a little bit more than I did. It is definitely a kind story. It's definitely picturesque. Oh my, the descriptions of the countryside where the Italian villa is. Oh, you just couldn't ask for more in terms of beautiful settings and breezes and food and wine and views and walks and everything. It's just so beautiful, beautiful. Now the point of all this beauty is that these 4 women have rented this slightly dilapidated castle for the month of April, and each of them comes to the story with some kind of deep discontent, grief in some cases, or the grief and the discontent are very tightly mixed, and the beauty and the peace and the surrounding and each other's healing in the face of all of this serves to help each other heal. Now, the only part I didn't love about this is 2 of the women are very unhappy in their marriages, and the 3rd woman is a young, beautiful woman who's just been so, what's that word, like, ogled, or men just fall at her feet. She's completely jaded about men. She doesn't trust them. She's just been treated like an object just too often, and so she has no interest in men, and she's trying to figure out what is she going to do with her life. She's had a life of privilege and frippery, and she's just at that kind of crossroads. So everybody's at a crossroad of some kind, and the other 4th woman is at a crossroad with respect that she just keeps reliving her past, and it was a fairly vigorous past. She knew a lot of famous people, and she just keeps referring to these and has not come along into the present. The present for her holds no kind of allure at all, but this incredible landscape is what brings her into the present moment more and more, and she starts to realize that there are things that are happening in her life right this minute that are worth participating in, not having to always go back to the past. But coming back to the part that I didn't love is that the 2 women felt that the way that they could only solve their marriage woes was to have the men there, and this is like insta solution. And I was just, no, okay, I'm coming at it from almost 100 years ago. It was written in 1922, so yeah, 100 years later, and I'm thinking, you gotta do your own fixing before you can fix a marriage, you know, because the other person is part of the problem, and they aren't part of they might not even know you're on a healing path. So I had this 20th, I never remember what century we're in, 21st century, perception of what was happening in 1922. And so I had to keep putting that aside because that's just not how things were done in the 1920s. So the husbands show up and there's kind of insta solution to the marital problems. That's okay in a way because everybody's happy by the end. So this is one of those books that will not crush your soul. I must do part 2 on that video of books that don't crush your soul. This is definitely one of them. I think you can enjoy it for so many reasons. All of the characters are very nicely drawn. There's quite a lot of difference between them, but they're not stereotypes. They're not placeholders. They're all very nicely drawn. And I am going to follow through on her other 2 books, which Elizabeth and Her German Garden. Follow and see what happens about that. That would make nice summer reading, I think. All right, the other book I read is The Book of Boy by Catherine Gilbert Murdock. And this is a really sweet middle grade reader book. We have, okay, again, this is written in the Middle Ages, and it is not really a crusade, but it has that kind of tone in that the main adult character is going to, on a what's that called? Not a pageant, a pilgrimage. But he's not going to worship at these different churches and in front of the relics. He's stealing them. He figures if he can collect a certain group of relics together, it will make this kind of magical moment where if he gets to Rome in front of the tomb of St. Peter, then he will have healing. He is someone who has... okay, can't give it away. He has escaped something. And in order for him to have closure, this is what his task is. And he's been at it for quite a while and encounters a young hunchback boy on his journeys and realizes that this boy can be useful. Boy, because that's his actual name, Boy is a young lad who has a hunchback and is, you know, considered to be like an evil entity. People throw stones at him, curse him, and really has quite a tough life of it. So he turns out to be helpful, and they head down to Rome as well. And he figures, well, if he can get to the tomb, if this guy can get his wishes met at the tomb, then so can Boy. And Boy's wish is to be a boy. Well, there is a very interesting plot twist, or maybe it's more of a character twist about Boy. And as time goes by, we start to realize just who Boy actually is. And I can't say anything more than that. Now, it's not particularly magical. There is, because we're dealing with relics in churches, well, you know, it's not going to kill anybody to know something that's other than their belief system. But there's definitely a belief system in there, and I'm not in a belief system, so but I have a very good grasp of world history and world religions. So I was able to enjoy it from those terms. If you don't have a strong kind of knowledge of what would take place in a church or what would take place on a pilgrimage and so on, it might be worth a little bit of Wikipedia just ahead of time if you've got a child who's going to be asking you some questions. But it's not insurmountable by any stretch. I mean, most people have at least seen a church. So I really liked this. The writing was beautiful. She really creates a very interesting journey for the two characters, and the solutions on how to steal these different relics are both amusing and full of adventure. And there's quite a lot of little dilemmas that happen between each theft. So it was a rip-roaring little tale, and Boy is just a lovely character. And it has an ending that is unexpected, I think. Yeah, I would say it's quite unexpected. So, totally recommend this one as well. Now, it was written some time ago. Oh, there are illustrations in it too. I should have said that. It's not a heavily illustrated book, but just, you know, nice little moments in the book. When was this printed? I'm going to double check and see whether she has any more. This was written a while ago, 2018. So this is another author that I think is worth checking out and seeing whether she has anything else in the stuff that she's done. So Yeah, that's it for me. Next week I'll be bringing you my experiences with the first year in my Newberry Challenge, and I'm looking forward to it. I hope you are too. Take care, and I hope all your reading dreams and adventures continue to come true.